I think, many of the lessons learned since setting up Social Firms Australia at the end of 2004 have been about um, the business imperatives. Um, and again, a risk in the area of social enterprise more broadly, but particularly social firms where the trade has got to pay for staff salaries. I and many others that I had contact with in the early years were looking at business types based on what the clients or job seekers with a mental illness might like, or what we thought would work, and familiar ideas such as a community cafe or a kennels or an art gallery with a bookshop were all ideas that might have had the right kind of jobs for people I knew who were looking for work. But what I quickly learnt was that they weren't going to make sufficient money to pay more than one staff, and we were looking at developing social firms to employ at least 5 full-time equivalent staff. And so we learned early on that a lot of business ideas simply weren't going to work as social firms. We also learned early on that even though the social firm is developed and designed to be a supportive work environment for all employees, it was important to communicate that the employees still are expected to be able to meet the minimum requirements of the job, and the purpose of a social firm is not to offer employment to people who aren't going to get a job anywhere else. It's a work environment that can be far more flexible and responsive and take a few more chances, but everybody is going to need to pull together, and that's an important message too, and that people will get a lot of support to do their job. There can be a lot of flexibility around shifts and mentoring, but at the end of the day there is a position description and there is an expectation that people will be able to do as much as is expected in their position description, and with support, with flexibility, with extra coaching. It does come down to the individual being able to make the progress that's required.
Yeah,
so I think, yes, in both counts, it needs to be a real business, and it has to be real work. And for some people, they have found out that they weren't ready to sort of meet the expectations. But the good thing about a social firm is what we've seen is the door was never closed. It was, okay, well, maybe you need to work on A, B, and C. If going without a smoke for 20 minutes is too much right now, maybe talk to some of your support workers about doing a quick course and come back in 6 months and let's have another go, or come back as a casual employee, or come back for some training. So we have seen people return after working on some of the issues that prevented them from getting on with the job the first time round.
And that's a significant difference from working in mainstream employment without disclosing, potentially, would you say? Like, something happens in a non-supportive workplace, you potentially burn all your bridges there.
Yes,
they're not going to invite you back.
We hear about this happening quite a lot, that somebody will be supported to get a job, and particularly if it's a full-time job, you've not only got to manage the job, but you've suddenly got to manage your life around the hours that you're working, and those two combined can be quite catastrophic for someone. And if the person is finding it difficult to manage at work, confidence is a huge issue, so you tend not to ask somebody for support or advice if you're struggling, and it can spiral down quite quickly. And we do hear of a lot of people who just bomb out and don't turn up one day, or a performance managed, and the employer or the co-workers aren't aware that there is a mental illness, or maybe they are, but it's all too late to do anything about it. And so it can end in sort of quite traumatic circumstances for the employee, that's going to often hamper their chances of a safe return to work, a more secure and durable outcome, and also have them feel that they're not capable of working, which is a very sad message for anybody to give themselves. So to build in success, to make sure it works, even if that means starting with 4 hours a week, and start with a role that's very manageable, because often the issues people will be working with are arriving on time, confidence, focusing on the requirements of that particular job, going
Mm.
without the smoke,
Mm.
resisting the temptation to quit when they're feeling a bit anxious, getting over some of the early stresses involved with starting a new job, and then building up their skills and responsibilities as time goes on.
Yeah. So is it safe to say that, and I think we've seen this in some of the other programs we've run, that there's all sorts of stages of job readiness, and it's that entry into a social firm isn't necessarily you need to be at a certain stage of readiness for that. That it's if you're not ready for other employment, then potentially you're not ready for employment in a social firm, even with the extra supports.
Well, you might.
How would you sort of see the difference?
Yes, I would think there would be some people who could work in a social firm who wouldn't be able to work in an environment where there's no support or less support.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, other workplaces should build in that support, and that's something
Absolutely.
we'd like to see social firms role modelling for other workplaces, because a lot of the support is available to employers, but of course it's going to be difficult if the person hasn't disclosed. But the social firm will inevitably be making more accommodations than, not all workplaces, but most workplaces.
Yeah.
And you see, a social firm could have a come and try afternoon. Certainly, some of the ones we work with do have work experience programs or opportunities to just come and watch what's going in or join in for a while. So making it a very easy return to work, starting with an afternoon or turning up for an hour, trying it out, and then moving into increased hours if it looks like there's an opportunity.
Okay. What advice would you give to, let's start with, there's a few different people that can be affected by this, but let's say a disability employment consultant who's interested, has clients they're trying to place into employment and wants to know more about social firms, where to find them, how their clients might get work there.
Yes, generally it's a disability employment service who would be setting up the social firm.
Right.
So we work with a number of disability employment services who can see the logic in having their own social enterprise that they're prepared to sort of take on the management of, to create employment and training opportunities for their job seekers. So we're not at the stage quite yet, although there have been some vacancies advertised in other areas in social firms that are doing maintenance, and I think that will probably increase as time goes on. So rather than people looking for a social firm to work in, at the moment it's more the Disability Employment Service or the Australian Disability Enterprise looking to establish a social firm as a division of their organisation.
Okay.
But then it would sort of take its place down the high street. It wouldn't be badged as the Disability Employment Service. It would be the bakery or the nursery or the hotel or whatever the social firms is.
How important do you think that is? And I've sort of seen that sometimes a social firm will say, or a social enterprise even will say what it is and how it works, and often they won't. It's a business and they compete on the level like any other business.
Perhaps it's prudent too, in case people aren't so familiar with the territory, to just define what a social enterprise is.
Yes.
Although there's quite a bit of discussion, we stick to a fairly basic definition. A social enterprise is a not-for-profit business venture which trades for a social purpose. So it's about the purpose. And now there's quite a bit of discussion about whether a social enterprise has to be a not-for-profit, but we haven't got too engaged in that discussion, I think. And we always say not-for-profit distribution. We want the social firms anyway to be profitable. It's just any surplus goes back into the social firm to create new employment opportunities or to enhance the operation in some way. In the happy event that the social firm can't grow anymore and can't have any more improvements, then it would be the not-for-profit organisation that would be using the surplus to benefit their clients in some other programme. So I always say it's the innermost Russian doll that's the most important. What's the purpose of the social firm or the social enterprise? And I think there may be some risk if there's a for-profit entity setting up a social enterprise, because it just needs to be very clear what the purpose of setting up the business has been. What was the question?
Just that difference where some social. Well, it was good to distinguish
Yes.
social firm and social enterprise, but just where businesses may identify and promote the fact,
That's right.
and where they
Yes,
may not,
yes,
where that
yeah,
kind of
yes.
decision lies.
And I think it's very much the choice of the organisation setting up the social firm, and because it's important that the commercial business goals are the priority, because if the support or social goals become the priority, the business operations may be compromised by a focus on support or the individual needs of employees. So it is important that if it's a bakery, the bread has got to be fresh and it's got to be ready at 6 in the morning and delivered. And it's important that the message to the customers is this is a bakery. That's the number one message. Number two message may well be, and it's a social firm creating employment for people who've experienced barriers in the past. Some choose not to promote it at all, and others would have it in their marketing material. I think all would agree it doesn't make sense to rely on that as your marketing pitch. It might help you sell a few coffees or whatever, but if the coffee isn't up to the required standard, people won't come back. But I think it is good to promote a social firm as a social firm. I think it's an exciting new development in the world of business. I think for-profits and not-for-profits should be able to take their place next to each other down the high street and collaborate and understand that you need both. And that we should all be looking to be accessible to people with mental illness and other barriers, and that there may be lessons to be learnt for the for-profit businesses that the social firms can really offer valuable insights and expertise into. And I think customers too, if they know that if they buy their bonsais or their bread from this particular social firm, not only are they getting a great quality loaf of bread, but they're also helping somebody with a mental illness back to
double
work.
impact.
Yes.